Hey everyone, what's up? I hope you guys are doing well today. And before we get started, let me pull up my presentation here. If I can find it, here we go. All right. So, as you can see, my presentation is on Mary Church Terrell and the work of the Black Women's Club movement. It's on chapter 14, if you didn't know that already. But let's go ahead and get into it. So before we get into more specifically what Mary and the Black Women's movement like kind of represented and believed, let's talk about a little bit of the climate they were in. So this kind of came around in the 19th century, the end of the 1800s into like the 1900s, and even into the there's still a lot of prevalence with some of the stuff today. So this was a massive time of transition, and like at this point, society was still undecided on its obligation to the recently emancipated African Americans. Pretty much meaning they didn't know like how to treat them. Obviously we know today that it's like obviously treat them equally, but that was still something that wasn't going on at the time, even though they were all free legally. And so African Americans actually found more constraint due to social control. So things such as segregation, disenfranchisement, lynchings, etc., racism in general. And this ended up leading to the development of many parallel institutions that embodied equality and opportunity for all. So more black churches, black universities, stores that like only black people could go to, that sort of thing. And this eventually led to the development of the National Association of Colored Women, or the NACW, which is where we're going to get started today. Because before we can get to Mary Church Terrell, something that I think was really cool, something really interesting, is that you'll see that how a lot of her influence and her ideas comes from the NACW and something else called the social gospel, which we will talk about in a minute. And this is an Mary Church Terrell right here. But again, let's start with the NACW. The NACW is a socio-religious movement that was working towards social reform and uplifting Black communities through the protection of the hopeful future, which I'll give you a little sneak peek here. That's pretty much children and families and that sort of thing. That's what that hopeful future represents. And so their goal is to secure harmony of action and cooperation amongst all women, and properly developing the home and raising children that hope through the help of God. And so they heavily were believed in the welfare of children, so they wanted the children to have education opportunities, vocational training, employment, that sort of thing. Emphasis is on physical development, moral education, establishing like a secure home life, and even like the nurturing in order so that children will be able to thrive no matter the situation. And we'll get into all that a little bit more as we go. Some of the work that the NACW did more specifically was they would build and develop industrial schools. They would develop schools for girls, like adult education programs, and they also deeply desired like they wanted homes and education filled with God, just as nature is. Pretty much saying like they don't want the separation of like school and home and God. Like they think that those places are the perfect place to start introducing God to children, just like how God is always in nature. That's kind of their point there. And then their second major work was they would fight for the improvement of home life, so like better environments for children to live in, and they also encouraged African Americans to love and create homes. So not like literally, oh, let's go grab bricks and mortar and build houses, but create that warm feeling that we would call home. And then the third thing is something that's going to be super prevalent throughout the rest of this presentation, which is create kindergartens. So kindergartens, like I mean, most of us probably went to kindergarten, but the whole idea here is that children are seen as human plants that need trained and nurtured in relation to God, man, and nature. This kindergarten causes children to grow quicker in observation, develop clear ideas, grow quicker in school subjects, and recognize the rights of others. So it's pretty much like this almost this combination of school and like moral teaching and how to be, a good human, right? So it's like it focuses on, training the brain, training the heart, and just how to live life as a person. And again, at the bottom here it says kingdom is necessary, or kindergarten is necessary, because at this time, back again in the 1900s, a home life for all people is still developing, meaning that like because of racism and because of turmoil throughout the nation, uh not all people felt welcome. Like Black people were still like it was hard for them to develop a home, a healthy home life, when it was hard for them to find that home in the first place. And it also just gives a place for children to grow while parents are at work. This was something that I thought was really interesting. But they literally believed that kindergarten would neutralize the need for prisons. They thought that the reason why people went to prison is because they had a terrible home life, and because they didn't develop well. And so if you go to kindergarten, you develop well, you have a good home life until you don't go to prison. Is A plus B equals C. A simple math right there. And then they also believe in the sweet faith truthfulness of children. That's kind of the nature they believe in, and they see that as protected and strengthened. And then again, kindergarten is necessary because it benefits not only the children and how they learn and develop, but also the parents, because the parents can have time to go to work and still get money and that sort of thing. And so now we're moving on to the social gospel here, like again, because in order to get to Mary Church Terrell, you have the ideas of the NACW plus the ideas of the social gospel. And so the social gospel is pretty much a theological movement that brought together theology and sociology. It would look at the issues of the world, and it would and then look at the character of God and see like, okay, like if this is issues of the world, this is God, like we need to really find a way to bring these together and see how God would do and act in these certain situations. And it came about as a response to inequality and other societal issues that were prevalent in their time. Its four major tenets are social salvation based on the dynamic interpretation of God's kingdom, the immanence of God, the fatherhood of God, and the brotherhood of man. And then this one I thought was really cool, but not simply seeking charity, but also justice. So, for example, it's like it's one thing to just simply give your money to a cause. It's another thing to literally, devote your life to start, like, I don't know, to protest certain things, or to get down and dirty with get your hands dirty a little bit with like let's talk about like digging wells, for example. It's one thing to give money towards a company that dig wells. It's another thing to go out and do the digging yourself. That's kind of the idea that we're talking about here. And the social gospel desires to be the church outside of the churches. So it's like moving things outside of the sanctuary and loving people everywhere. So super cool idea here. And so now we're finally getting to Mary Church Terrell. And just to give some background information here, her parent, like she has a super interesting background with her parents. Her dad was possibly the first Black billionaire in the South, which is like awesome. Like major props to him. And then her mom was also a successful salon business owner. So two, like this would have been unheard of in this time. People like finding this much success this quickly after getting freed from slavery. And she was actually born the year of the Emancipation Proclamation. So she herself was never a slave, but her parents were, which helped her just see how much the injustice and racism affected them and their family, and how that all went together there. She also earned a master's degree from Oberlin College, which was this progressive school that actually was on the forefront of the push for the social gospel ideas. And then after that, she was a high school teacher and a college professor before eventually traveling to become a public lecturer. after she got married. And then ties in with the NACW because she happened to be the three-time president of the NACW. Um, and so when we look at Mary Church Terrell and like we're all getting our degrees in practical theology, at least most of us are. Well, she is literally the definition of a practical theologian. I really wish that we could have learned a lot more about her specifically. But this was her three major practical questions that she pretty much lived her life by. The first was how to address the pain that colored mothers felt for their children. The second was how to instill adequate values and knowledge into children. And the third was how to create a social context in which children could flourish. And so those were kind of like the three guiding questions that she would like live her life by. And we're going to look at some of her answers here. So one of the first things that she talked about and was that children are human plants. Again, this is something that she kind of got from the NACW, as you saw when we talked about kindergarten a little bit earlier. But she believes it's the parents' job to guide children through the thorny paths of prejudice, temptation, and injustice. Kinder and and you're going to see kindergarten mentioned a lot. This is like their favorite thing to talk about in the NACW apparently, and it's all throughout Mary Church Terrell's practical solutions to different societal issues. But kindergarten is needed to say, oh, not to Dave future children, but to save future children, no matter whether their name is Dave or not. But it'll get rid of evil poverty and racial oppression that causes suffering. Again, that idea that kindergarten is this place where kids can go and develop freely and not have to worry about the societal issues because they're going to have adults there that care about them, that teach them how to be people, how to love others, that sort of thing. And so eventually, if everyone goes to kindergarten and absorbs these ideas, then suffering will hopefully go away. And again, remember, kindergarten is all through like it's a Christian thing, so it's not like that it's not like without God suffering is going to go away, but no, this is all through God. And then her second answer is that children's nature is of sweet faith truthfulness. I thought this was really interesting. Because she has a little bit of a confliction here by saying that she believes there's sweet faith truthfulness, but then she literally also says that they have a tainted side here. So pretty much what she's saying is that the sweet faith truthfulness is this innocence, is this innocence that children have that we need to protect. Like they're victims of a busy and unjust world. Just like they haven't done anything wrong yet, the world continues to put them in terrible situations, and so we have to protect that. And that is how children are innocent. Yet she also believes in original sin. She says that children naturally have a tainted side. And again, look, here's kindergarten coming up again, which is why kindergarten and daycare is necessary. Because if while parents are at work, if there's no place for children to go, they're left alone to be eventually dominated by that sin nature, by that tainted side. So she does believe in original sin within children, but she also believes in a certain innocence that kids have. Like they're not the problems of the world, but they end up getting a lot of the consequences from those problems. One of her third answer is that children are gifts to the whole community. We always talk about how children are gifts to the parents, at least most of the time. I'm sure not all the time. But one of the things that was really interesting here that Mary Church Terrell wrestled with was the idea of the law of heredity, which was pretty much the idea that like um you know kind of like inherited sin, like when one person in a family sins, and that tends to be a struggle for the whole family tree after that. and she thought that was unjust and couldn't understand what that was, like why God would let that happen. And she pretty much came to the conclusion that the law of heredity is a punishment for exploiting the gift, that is children, that is childhood. And again, like that's not what you want to do. And so she talks a lot about how children are the foundation for future. They are the hope, for the they are the hope for just what the NACW, what the social gospel is trying to achieve, which is freedom for all people, which is, God literally, weaved throughout every aspect of life, not just church on Sundays, but education throughout the week, home lives every single day, all that sort of stuff. And then her fourth answer is that the adult community has obligation to provide proper environments for care, protection, and guidance. So look at that. Kindergarten comes up again. Like they seriously love kindergarten. Like this was their calling card. So kindergarten, daycare, children's clubs, that are led by what she calls a revolutionary adult, meaning that these are the people that lead these institutions have to recognize that, um, these are like they are starting a revolution against the sin of this world, against injustice, against poverty, against suffering, all this stuff. Kindergarten, daycare, just develop like these people that just intentionally develop children, like you are forming an army to defeat the evil of the world. And so one of the things that they're going to do to help do that is tell stories, teach people how, or teach the kids how to treat animals well, how to respect their elders, and also pity the unfortunate and the weak. Because again, if you teach people well, if you teach children well how to love others, then that's going to keep them out of jail. That's going to get rid of suffering, get rid of poverty. These were all big ideas for Mary Church Terrell and the NACW. And another way that, the adult community obligation would come to fruition was schools of domestic science, which is kind of like what I mentioned earlier with them building the schools for girls and adult education programs. It's just the embracing of trying to make sure you put God in literally every aspect of your life, including science, including the home. So that's where that kind of comes to play again. And then the final answer that we're going to talk about, that Mary Church Terrell kind of, pushes with her theology um, is that positively affecting the lives of children benefits both the parents and the community. One of the interesting, kind of topics that got brought up under this is that the reciprocity will be made known in the future, meaning that, when you're parenting a young child, you don't often get, um like a reciprocated love, like intentional love in the way that a parent gives to the child, from the child. It's a lot of giving, and they're doing a lot of taking. But if you take them to kindergarten, if you raise them well, if you teach them how to be a good person, then eventually that reciprocity will come. Eventually they will know how to love you back intentionally. So that's kind of what that point is talking about there. And again, they want they're talking again about teaching to fight against injustice. So Mary Church Terrell, like was very specific when she would raise her daughter, how she raised her daughters, to make sure they did not let anyone treat them poorly. And that also taught them not to treat other people poorly, to fight against the injustice of the world. And something else that was really interesting to me was the emphasis that she had on preparing children for the complex and unjust world. So it's one thing for a parent to simply, provide for the children and to love the children well. But she actually believes that part of loving for children well, part of being a parent is preparing them for the complex and unjust world, meaning that you can be the nicest parent ever, but if your kid grows up and ends up getting destroyed by the world because they didn't they weren't prepared for it, I guess, then you failed as a parent. And so one of the parents' jobs has to be to prepare their child, for the darkness that they're going to face when they eventually leave their home. And then the final point, which is kind of the whole tying of the bow for this whole entire presentation for Mary Church Terrell's entire theology, is that children equal hope. Children are the hope for the future. Again, if you look at her life, her parents experienced slavery, they experienced the brunt of the world, they experienced racism like no other. But when they had Mary Church Terrell, instantly hope was brought into their life. And that's because that's because the second that they recognize that they have a child here, someone that can change the narrative for all Black people, for all people in general, and let kind of God dictate that life instead of letting their past dictate their life, that leads to a brighter future for all people, something that we're partially experiencing today and partially still fighting for. And so that is kind of the theology of Mary Church Terrell, and I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. My source was just our book that we were reading. But yeah, so thank you so much. I hope you all are doing well.